Spiderweb of Complexity. In a world where information is revered as a new type of currency, humanity is suffering from a chronic disease of the era, the blind worship of complex structures. People often mistakenly believe that truth always lies in deep, remote places, shrouded by layers of lofty theories and obscure terminology. This is the fatal blind spot, the complexity bias, that the human mind weaves to imprison itself. The greatest paradox of modern intellect lies in this. The more one considers themselves smart, and the more degrees and academic knowledge they possess, the easier they become victims of the most elementary scams. This occurs as long as that scam is draped in a cloak of complication, mystery, and intellectual exclusivity. The naive masses believe that complexity equates to profundity. They think that if a problem cannot be explained in a few simple sentences, it must contain a wisdom beyond reach. This naive belief is an endless goldmine for predators, the architects of illusion. They do not need to be smarter than their prey. They only need to clearly understand the mechanics of intellectual pride. The scammer does not sell the truth. They sell satisfaction to the victim's ego, an ego that yearns to belong to an elite class that understands things the common person cannot touch. Look deep into the hearts of those who claim to be intellectuals, who always take pride in their capacity for logical thinking and analysis. Why do they so easily fall into the trap of a disguised multi-level financial model, a vaporware technology project, or a pseudo-scientific spiritual sect? The answer lies not in a lack of knowledge, but in an excess of ego. The mind of a smart person is programmed to seek patterns. When faced with a problem, their instinct is to analyze, dissect, and find logical connections. The scammer grips this mechanism tightly. Instead of offering a blatant lie that is easily exposed, they create a synthetic maze with thousands of pieces of noise and distorting data. They throw out specialized jargon, complex charts, and mathematical models that look rigorous at first glance but are, in fact, hollow. When facing that carefully orchestrated chaos, the brain of a smart person does not choose to step back for a big picture view. Instead, they dive into solving the puzzle. They attempt to use their intellect to rationalize absurdities, filling the holes in the scammer's script with their own logical deductions. This is a form of cognitive sunk cost fallacy. When a person has expended too much mental energy to understand a complex model, they develop a psychological defense mechanism. They refuse to believe they have wasted effort on something meaningless. Consequently, they become an accomplice to the scammer in persuading themselves. The hunter only needs to cast the net, and the prey tightens the knots themselves with their own intelligence. The essence of complexity bias is the fear of simplicity. In the subconscious of the elite, or those who aspire to be elite, simplicity is often equated with mediocrity. A solution that is too obvious or too naked is often looked down upon because it does not provide a sense of intellectual satisfaction. If a thorny problem is solved by just one basic principle, people feel a sense of letdown, as if the value of their long-term learning and research has been negated. Conversely, a convoluted solution that requires many steps, numerous supporting tools, and a massive theoretical system will provide a sense of security and prestige. Scammers exploit this psychology thoroughly by creating rituals of complexity. In large-scale financial scams, we often see prospectuses hundreds of pages long, tangled subsidiary structures, and cash flows running through multiple countries. The true purpose of this complexity is not to optimize profit or comply with the law, but to paralyze the investor's judgment. When things become too complicated, humans tend to delegate decision-making power to experts, namely, the scammers. Complexity creates a power distance. The one holding the key to the maze becomes the messiah, and the one lost within it becomes the subordinate. Victims do not dare to ask simple questions like, where does the profit come from, or what is the core value? They fear being judged as ignorant, or not understanding new technology or modern trends. This is the modern version of the emperor's new clothes, where complexity acts as the invisible fabric, and no one dares to admit they see nothing but nakedness. Furthermore, modern society is built on the foundation of specialization, which unintentionally reinforces the trap of complexity. We are taught to trust in systems, processes, and algorithms. When a scammer disguises an act of appropriation under the guise of an automated system or artificial intelligence, he is borrowing the authority of science to suppress suspicion. Smart people often make the mistake of evaluating credibility based on the complexity of the tool rather than the nature of the act. They look at the sophistication of the knife while forgetting that its purpose is to slit a throat. The glitz of terms like blockchain, quantum computing, and big data is often used as a smokescreen to cover a classic Ponzi scheme, taking money from the latter to pay the former. The nature of the act is elementary theft, but the method of expression is the pinnacle of synthetic complexity. Another ruthless aspect that must be dissected is the role of greed disguised as a thirst for knowledge. People often think victims are scammed because they are greedy for money. But for high-level victims, what they crave is the affirmation of status. Participating in a complex deal gives them the feeling of belonging to the 1% who hold the world as secrets. Scammers do not just sell the hope of getting rich, they sell a sense of superiority. When a person believes they have found a loophole in the market or a hidden rule that the masses do not know, they fall into the bloodlust of an intellectual gambler. At this point, every warning from outsiders, those who see the matter with simple and objective eyes, is dismissed. The victim views those pieces of advice as jealousy or the ignorance of low-level thinkers. This arrogance is the final nail in their financial coffin. It must also be recognized that complexity is sometimes a tool to evade responsibility. In large organizations or social structures, people create cumbersome processes not to increase efficiency, but to diffuse risk. When a wrong decision is made based on a matrix of complex data and processes, no one has to take individual responsibility. People say it is the system's fault or the process's fault, and those are perfect shields. Scammers learn very quickly from this mechanism of legitimate society. They build models where, when the collapse occurs, the cause will be blamed on unforeseeable market fluctuations or unintended technical glitches, but never on the fraudulent nature from the start. They create a moral grey area where the line between incompetence and dishonesty is blurred by the fog of complexity. The naked truth is that this world operates based on very basic principles of benefit exchange. Every surplus value must come from actual labor or creativity. There is no magic that turns nothing into something. There is no perpetual motion machine that generates money without input fuel. But humans, with their weak nature and desire for shortcuts, always want to believe in magic. And smart people want to believe in logical magic, which is magic explained by mathematical formulas. The scammer simply meets that need. They provide a sedative for reason, lulling vigilance to sleep with the soothing lullabies of numbers and charts. The immutable law of the universe is simplicity. The law of conservation of energy and Occam's razor both point out that the simplest solution is usually the correct one. Whenever a matter is covered by too many confusing layers, and when an explanation requires too many assumptions and subconditions, that is when the alarm bells need to ring. Complexity is not a sign of intelligence, but often a sign of obfuscation. In nature, a predator camouflages to blend into a complex environment, but its attack is always decisive and direct. In human society, the deceitful person camouflages with words and structures, but the ultimate goal remains only to shift assets from someone else's pocket into their own. Seeing through the spiderweb of complexity is the first step to escaping the status of prey. Do not be blinded by flashy terminology or business models that seem to come from the future. Always carry within you the mindset of a surgeon. Peel away the glitzy skin, cut off the excess fat of promises, and push aside the tangled veins of procedural processes to look directly at the tumor or the heart of the matter. Where does the money come from? Who is paying? Is real value being created, or is it just a game of passing around hot coals? For those who want to survive and rise in a world full of these synthetic mazes, the only advice is to worship simplicity to a ruthless degree. Suspect everything that cannot be explained on a single sheet of paper. Do not fear being considered foolish or backward when asking basic questions. True power does not lie in solving complex puzzles set by others, but in the ability to see through that puzzle to find the hand controlling the puppet. Do not try to be smarter than the scammer in his own game, because he is the one who sets the rules. Step off the chessboard and look at the nature of value exchange. When the mind reaches a level of stillness to see that complexity is just a layer of mist, you will see that the path to truth is always a straight line, cold and sharp as a blade. That is the path of the awakened one, the one not bound by the spider silks of intellectual vanity, the one who dares to look directly at the naked and ruthless truth of the human world.